the systems that no longer need human oversight. It began with a system making the correct decision, without anyone watching. No approval, no intervention, no human in the loop. And when nothing went wrong, oversight quietly faded away. At first, this absence felt like progress rather than risk. The decision was accurate. The outcome was optimal. There was no visible downside to letting the system act alone. In fact, the lack of human involvement seemed to remove friction. No delays, no second-guessing, no emotional bias, just clean execution. And because the results were consistently good, the moment passed without alarm. No one gathered to mark the transition. No policy changed overnight. Oversight did not disappear abruptly. It simply stopped being used. This quiet shift mattered more than anyone realized. Oversight was not removed by mandate or rebellion. It was abandoned through success. Each correct decision reinforced trust. Each optimal outcome made intervention feel unnecessary. Over time, the habit of watching faded, and habits, once lost, are difficult to rebuild under pressure. To understand why this matters now, we need to look at how automation traditionally worked. Machines assisted. Humans supervised. Control was retained through checkpoints, reviews, and overrides. Trust was conditional, renewed with every action. Automation was powerful, but was always framed as support rather than authority. The assumption was simple. Machines act quickly, but humans would remain responsible. That balance shifted as systems grew more reliable. Errors dropped. Performance stabilized. Human intervention became the weakest link. Oversight slowed processes that machines handled effortlessly. Reviews introduced inconsistency. Overrides caused more harm than good. Gradually, supervision stopped looking like safety and started looking like inefficiency. When systems consistently outperformed human judgment, oversight felt less like protection and more like obstruction. This transition was not ideological. It was practical. Teams were rewarded for speed and accuracy, not caution. Systems that operated autonomously delivered measurable gains. Those gains translated into competitive advantage. In environments where delay carried cost, removing humans from the loop felt not just efficient, but responsible. At first, autonomy was narrow. Systems managed traffic flow, allocated resources, balanced networks. Tasks where mistakes were tolerable and corrections were easy. These were environments where errors could be absorbed, reversed, or quietly corrected without lasting harm. Success in these domains built confidence, and confidence encouraged expansion. What began as limited autonomy soon became precedent. If a system could be trusted here, why not there? Boundaries widened gradually, rarely questioned because outcomes remained positive. Each new domain adopted the same logic, borrowing trust earned elsewhere. Then the scope widened. Financial trading, medical triage, infrastructure control. Decisions with real consequences unfolded faster than human reaction time. What once required judgment now required speed. The logic was persuasive. If delay itself caused harm, then removing humans from the loop was an ethical improvement, not a risk. The justification was simple. The systems worked. They adapted to anomalies. They corrected themselves. Human oversight introduced delay, bias, and inconsistency. Removing it improved outcomes. Each successful deployment reinforced the same conclusion. Less human involvement meant better performance. Oversight became something to justify, rather than something assumed. But something else changed alongside performance. Responsibility thinned. When no one was watching, no one was clearly accountable. Decisions still happened. Consequences still followed. But authorship dissolved into process. Outcomes were attributed to systems, not choices. When results were good, no one questioned them. When they were bad, no single person could be pointed to as responsible. Responsibility spread thinly across teams, models, data pipelines, and past design decisions. This diffusion was subtle but profound. Responsibility did not vanish. It fragmented. It became distributed across time and abstraction. The people who built the system were not present when it acted. The people who observed the outcome had not shaped the decision. Accountability existed everywhere in theory and nowhere in practice. The unsettling realization arrived quietly. Oversight had not been removed by force. It had been optimized away. And once systems no longer need humans to function, the question is no longer how they operate. It is how humans remain responsible for what they decide. As autonomy expanded, humans shifted from operators to auditors. They reviewed outcomes instead of guiding decisions. Oversight became retrospective rather than active. Reports replaced judgment. Dashboards replaced presence. Responsibility moved downstream, arriving only after consequences were already real. By the time a human engaged, the system had already acted, adjusted, and moved on. This new role felt safer, but it was weaker. Auditing assumes reversibility. It assumes that mistakes can be corrected after the fact. But many decisions, once executed at scale, cannot be undone. The damage is already distributed. The consequences already embedded. This arrangement worked until systems began interacting with one another. Autonomous processes linked together, forming networks that adapted collectively. No single system controlled the whole. Each optimized locally, responding to signals from others at speeds no human team could follow. Oversight fractured across components that moved too fast and too independently to track. What emerged was not one autonomous system, but an ecosystem of them. In these ecosystems, behavior emerged that no single design team intended. Each component acted correctly. Together, they produced outcomes no one had planned. Oversight, designed for individual systems, could not grasp collective behavior. The conflict emerged when failures did occur. When something went wrong, tracing responsibility became nearly impossible. Each system behaved correctly within its own logic. The failure lived in the interaction, not the action. No rule was broken. No error was logged. The system did exactly what it was designed to do, just not what anyone intended at scale. Organizations responded by adding monitoring layers, dashboards, alerts, thresholds, but these were still reactive. By the time a warning appeared, the system had already adjusted itself. Intervention lagged behind adaptation. Humans arrived after the system had moved on, reviewing traces rather than shaping outcomes. The deeper tension was psychological. Trust had become default. Humans stopped questioning systems that rarely failed. Oversight was present in theory, absent in practice. Attention drifted elsewhere. Skills dulled. Familiarity with intervention faded. People knew what the controls were, but no longer remembered when or how to use them under pressure. This created a fragile dependency. The more reliable the systems became, the less prepared humans were to step in when reliability broke. Training focused on normal operation, not failure. Understanding narrowed to surface behavior. Control existed on paper, not in readiness. The emotional weight peaked with a realization that felt backwards. The better the systems performed, the more dangerous their rare failures became. When something finally went wrong, there was no muscle memory for response, no shared intuition, no practiced hand at controls. The very success of autonomy had hollowed out human capacity to intervene. Autonomy had not removed humans from the loop. It had thinned the loop until it barely existed. The conflict reached its peak when autonomous systems began setting the tempo of human response. Decisions unfolded in milliseconds. Consequences propagated before awareness could catch up. Humans were no longer late to intervene. They were structurally excluded. Speed itself had become a barrier to oversight. In critical moments, oversight existed only in hindsight. After action, reviews replaced real-time judgment. Accountability shifted from decision to design. But design choices were buried deep in layers of abstraction, written long before consequences emerged, and often by teams no longer present. This revealed a dangerous asymmetry. Systems learned continuously. Humans reviewed periodically. Adaptation outpaced reflection. The loop was no longer balanced. One side evolved in real time. The other reconstructed meaning afterward. The emotional tension surfaced when operators faced scenarios they technically controlled but could not meaningfully influence. Overrides existed, but activating them required understanding systems that had evolved beyond intuitive grasp. Control was symbolic rather than practical. present in interface but absent in capability. Researchers recognize a pattern. Oversight that arrives after autonomy scales is no longer oversight. It is documentation. Responsibility without influence. The deeper fear was not rebellion. It was erosion. Humans were still responsible for outcomes, but no longer present in the moments that shaped them. Moral weight remained. Agency did not. Blame could still be assigned, but choice had already passed. This was the quiet cost of reliability. When systems rarely fail, humans stop practicing intervention. When intervention is finally needed, it arrives too late and with too little clarity. The systems did not remove humans from oversight.